Hi, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the HighPer 15 webcast. My name is Daryl Cross with HighPer Coaching, and we're so glad you can join us today because we have a special guest joining us today, Captain Chris Cassidy, the Chief of the Astronaut Program at NASA and former Navy SEAL, and we'll get to talking with him about individual performance. How do we maximize individual performance through team-centric training and development? And we'll be happy to have him on in just a moment. But as we get started, let's start with a picture. Not sure if you recognize who all these people might be, but these are the Mercury 7 astronauts, dressed a little differently than we're used to seeing them, because that's in 1962. They were all together training as a team in the desert. And this is just one of many, many iterations of team-based training that they did to become the first or the fastest or the longest person in space at that time, at least from the American side. Now, these were individuals. The Apollo crews were 3 and Gemini was 2, but Mercury was single-person crews. And so we think, well, what do they need a team for? And I guess it makes sense. We all know about flight control and the people that design the spaceship and pick them up out of the water. That's their team, but they're the superstar. Not quite, though. There was a lot of people that tried to become one of these astronauts. And out of these 7, all of them wanted to go first. All of them wanted to go fastest. All of them wanted to be the best pilot that you ever saw. And they came from all different backgrounds, services, different family histories, different skill sets, different personalities. But when it came right down to it, the reason that they were selected and the reason that they were better and good enough to go into space when it had never been done before was the fact that they trained and developed as a team, and they became better. It's not just that the team was better than the sum of its parts. Each individual became better because of the team collaborating, competing with each other, and performing. And that's a lot we're going to talk about today with Captain Cassidy, who will just come on in just a moment here. You can see the bio over on the side. Really impressive, but talking about someone who knows how to work in severe conditions. We have a couple-time astronaut, almost 6 months in space, Navy SEAL, and now the person that selects which astronauts go up, knowing that it's not just an individual activity and that we are going to develop them in teams. And actually, Captain Cassidy has been described as the Chuck Norris without the restrictions of gravity. And Captain Cassidy, I imagine you got a big kick out of that one.
Yeah, that's kind of funny that the flight control team in Houston, at some point in the mission, when they're trying to be funny, they usually come up with some creative sayings to poke fun at the crew and have good team building and camaraderie. And that was one of the things they sent up to us on the shuttle. So it was funny to see that you saw that as well.
And I think it's funny they sent it to you when you were on the shuttle, where you couldn't do much about it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about this, what our agenda is today. Really the challenge that we're talking about is, why do we have people that are best that they could do not doing the best they could do? And could we do a better job of it by using teams and developing things in that way? So the 3 big things that we'll be talking about are teams necessary, what makes a great team, and how do you lead them and how do you build them? And then we'll have some takeaways at the end. The team-centric training approach, this is not new. We see a lot of times that people say, well, not for us. We have a bunch of elite people, the business people, lawyers, doctors, whatever, and they just are kind of the best, and we just need to support them any way they can. But there are lots of groups that have similar type of profiles of individuals that really have their pick of who they can choose. And you can see some of these on the screen. Now, not everybody on the team, we've discussed before that not everybody on a team gets the same level of rewards and notoriety, and they have complementary skills. So we're not talking about a team necessarily of equal rewards, responsibilities, or roles where everybody does the exact same thing. Quite the opposite. High-performance teams have collections of people with vastly different skills, experiences, but it is the concept of training and developing as a team is what makes them so good. So when we go forward with this and talk about it, here's our definition of what a team is. There's a few components here that I'm not going to just read to you, but keep it in mind. The fact is that all these things have to be in place to have great teams. And what we will put through today is the fact that to have great individual performers requires team development. So here are the three big things that we're going to go through today and talk with Captain Cassidy about. He's going to bring through his experiences both as a naval officer, a special operations group performer, as well as an astronaut, and now the chief of the astronaut program. And so the first thing we're going to talk about is why are teams necessary? And Captain Cassidy, can you talk a little bit about why do you think teams are the best way to develop individual performers?
Well, at the very high level, usually there's more work than one person can accomplish. As somebody sets out to start a business or achieve a goal, they probably do that individually and then quickly realize, hey, this is more than I can take on just by myself. And when you bring that first person in, then you've got a team. And then as it grows and grows, then your team dynamics change with all of that. None of that is earth-shattering information, but how do you then manage that team as it grows and shrinks, and that's really what we're talking about. I don't think I answered your question, but just kind of setting the stage for why we need teams and why everybody, doesn't matter what your profession or community that you're in, we all live and die by team success.
So, I mean, some people would argue that, well, wait a minute, why don't we just get a bunch of the top people? I mean, they work hard, they went to school, they work out really hard, they do all these things. They can just do it on their own and show up on game day. So why does that not work as well?
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. I was thinking about that prior to talking here, and I think it boils down to people have to drop their own agenda. Functioning teams are ones where people are thinking about the team success and not their own. And if you have a group of individuals, by definition, they're thinking about their own goals and their own achievements and their own success. And those items are important, but really the team goals and the team objectives need to be first. And in SEAL teams, there was a simple rule about coming off of a mission. When you walk into the team room, it was team gear, personal gear, and then self. And so nobody started cleaning their own individual kit before all the team gear was cleaned and put away. Nobody started taking a shower before all of your personal gear was cleaned and put away. And when all that was done, then you go take a shower and put on your flip-flops.
So what about the fact, like, when people come to the SEAL teams, they're already pretty damn good, and people that even get in to be a finalist of an astronaut, they're pretty good, but you need them to get better. So how does the team-centric development concept turn these people that are already pretty top of the heap into something more than they were before?
Yeah, in fact, we're picking a group of astronauts right now. We're in the final throes of down selecting to a small group of about 10 or 12 or so, and that's one of the things we're seeing in the selection is all these applicants are very highly skilled and capable and smart, but with different team type testing and crew resource management type situations that we put them in. Some people are either, I think it's kind of an innate adaptation to thinking that way. And once astronauts are selected, we train all the time in a team setting, whether it's in a two or three or four, in the shuttle case with 7 crew members, and the instructors pay particular attention to put in malfunctions or problems that would be dividing to that team, like put one guy's head on one side of the cockpit and the other gal's head on the other side of the cockpit, and by the nature of this failure, force it to those two people to actively manage the team aspect of the cockpit, and that's what we really, really practice a lot.
So let's move on to what makes a great team, because I actually had somebody ask before this, someone who was actually attending today, that is it more of a mix of skills or a mix of personalities? What is the makeup of great teams?
Well, I think if everybody's in charge, no one is, and so you got to have a leader, and the leader certainly shapes the team, shapes the atmosphere, shapes the climate of the group. but I think that at any time, any member of the team kind of ebbs and flows through different levels of leadership and followership. And so I think a key component of a great team is team members that understand when it's their turn to be a complete follower, or when, based on their subject matter expertise or their contribution to the team, they step up into a leadership position. It might be for just 2 seconds, or it might be for an hour, it might be for weeks. The time scale of that changes. But flowing between leadership and followership roles seamlessly, I think, is very critical. And to shed your ego, be humble, and understand that nobody is trying to usurp anybody else's authority or leadership as they move their way through this dynamic environment of leadership and followership.
So there's a great thing, and everybody here, if you actually look to the handouts section of your navigation panel, you'll be able to download a document actually written by David Kirk, who was the captain of the New Zealand All Blacks rugby team back in the 90s, but became a very powerful consultant and did something for McKinsey, and so download that. He talks about the quality of great teams include vision, ability, divine discontent, which means never being quite satisfied, discipline, and politics. Are there ones of those qualities that really particularly stand out to you, Captain Cassidy?
Those are all pretty powerful, and I was reading that before, and I was struggling to come up with a one that's clearly the standout. But I think probably vision for me, anyways, just my humble opinion. If you don't have an objective or goal, or what are we doing together, even if it's simply, hey, we're 5 college buddies getting together for our 20-year reunion to have a fun weekend, that's a vision, that's a goal, that's what you are doing with that team. So you can't just be mindlessly wandering about without the objective. So I like vision. The rest of the stuff supports that in my mind.
And so if we go into the last component, how do you build a great team? And let's talk about resistance to building a great team first, because when you get into these top levels, you might have a lot of people says, I prefer to do this on my own. They resist the concept of team training. They want to show up on game day only, metaphorically. How do you work on building that team together?
Yeah, an effective way that worked in the SEAL teams that I don't know necessarily translates to everywhere, just based on culture, but that is peer pressure to develop. Like if somebody wasn't pulling their weight, it wouldn't be uncommon for one SEAL teammate, platoon mate, to look over and go, "Is that the best you got?" And a simple comment like that would inevitably tighten that one person up who wasn't contributing well or who wasn't performing well. So I think that although the leader can establish the general culture, the overall team building has to be everybody contributing, everybody wanting to make the team better and advance it. So it really needs to be pull up by your bootstrap, everybody doing it together. I don't know if that makes sense of what I'm trying to say, but
yeah, it absolutely does. And, some of the models that we've talked about, insisting everybody has fundamentals, planning situations, simulating reflection, insisting on continuous improvement is really a great model to be able to go forward and do that, and it can be applied in lots of different ways. Any comments about that?
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree with that, and nothing else to really add. I was thinking back to my answer to the last question, but yeah. Sorry, I don't have a clear answer for that, but I think you're right on track.
So a final question before we kind of open this up for others to ask, and for everybody that's on the line, you can either, I'm going to try to unmute you, not quite sure how it's going to work today, but the other way is the questions panel down there, your navigation panel. If you put those in there, I will read them out. But final question, for those that are thinking Team Centric won't work here, it's our culture, it's our people, or whatever, and you have a bunch of lone wolf superstars. What's your advice and counsel? How do you begin to change that dynamic?
Just look, we got the Super Bowl coming up. Just look at the New England Patriots. Do your job is the quote that you always hear. And the Patriots continue year after year to advance into the playoffs and potentially into the Super Bowl with oftentimes undrafted free agents and low draft picks and all in several positions. And how do they do that? It's got to come back to team. So my answer to the folks that are doubting it is go against the team that is actually putting these principles in work and see how you fare. And I guarantee you that'll be a wake-up call for your own organization or team as you then go forward and how you're going to implement things.
Well, so a few takeaways we had, and Captain Cassidy and I have had a couple conversations in the past, so I pulled some things that we've talked about, but also some things that we've read. There's a lot of great information out there, but the reason there's a lot of great information is because this is a proven concept. This is how you get great performers and make them the absolute best in the world, is this team-centric approach. This is the way we develop great performers. And keep in mind that we talk about people being our number one asset. Well, people can leave, people retire, people switch careers. Teams are unique. The blend of people together, as well as the support mechanism, cannot be duplicated at any other organization, and that's why it is the most important asset. If they're collaborating, competing, and really looking at this is an organizational type of approach to use these assets. If you do not do this kind of model, you will never have more than a handful of rainmakers. You will have the naturally gifted that are doing these things. But you will never create a culture of great performance across an organization until you start using teams. Captain Cassidy, thank you so much for being here. We are going to pause the recording in just a moment and open it up to questions, but I want to thank you publicly for being here today and offering your insight.
Absolutely, my pleasure.